Hi all, welcome back to English 101, the final module. And as you notice, we are looking at, we are really spending our time on a semester reflection. So this video is going to go over what we have here on the self-evaluation essay requirements. So you're going to see what those requirements are and then always refer back to this page that gives you those assignments. So I really want you to think about as you're going through this where you've been, where you're at, and where you're going. So we really want to focus on this self-evaluation, your growth as a writer. So over the past semester. So what we want you to focus on is these things. We want you to think about your development as a writer, and we want you to think about specific moments in your own work that shows you what you've learned. What have you learned this semester? How has this affected you as a writer, those lessons that you've learned, and why those lessons occurred? What was it that helped you learn those lessons? So we want to do some self-reflection. So as you're writing, we want you to think about these three things right here. And this is really going to help guide your writing. Okay? I want you to think about one, what are the techniques and practices that you used or thought maybe you should have used to accomplish the writing in this course? Think about the things that you've learned, the practices that you've put into place. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Why were these practices effective or ineffective? How did maybe those practices change over time? Maybe there was a practice that was ineffective at first, but then you modified for it to become effective later. And then the last thing, how did these techniques or practices affect you as a writer and your writing for future application in college and beyond? How did what you've learned here, how is that going to help you in your English 102 class, in your other courses, and your future, whatever it is you're doing, your future endeavors, your future career? So that's what we want you to be thinking about as you're writing this final essay. And so these three things that I have highlighted here in blue are really paramount in your essay. These three things are what the body of your essay should be focused on. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but these are the different competencies, our course competencies that we'll be dealing with or focusing on. And you've been doing this throughout the course, but again, I just want you to know as a reminder what we're going to be doing for this assignment. So these are the requirements. In your self-evaluation essay, you're going to be focusing on what we talked about up above, right? The techniques you used, why they were effective or not, and how they'll affect you as a writer and in your future. Okay? So I want you to think about how you're going to be organizing your work. And I'm going to, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the course outline and one of the assignments that you're going to be doing. But I want you to think about how each paragraph of your essay can focus on one technique. What's one technique you learned? Why was it effective or ineffective? And how does it affect you as a writer and your writing for future application? So you want to try to come up with three techniques, three things that you've learned, practices that you have learned that can help you or has helped you or maybe not helped you in your goal as a writer or in your endeavors as a writer beyond, okay? And as you're coming up with those 3 practices, I want you to refer to specific assignments that you've written over the past semester. I also want you to think of, and so you can refer back to as examples in assignments that you've already written. So in those paragraphs, you're going to be sharing an example of how you've shown that to work or not work. And then you're also going to be using sources that you have used this semester, and I will point those out in just a minute. 3 sources you're going to be citing. 2 of those sources are going to come from sources that Professor Holland has used over the past, 13 weeks. One of the sources that I want you to use is this document right here, the Framework for Success in Post-Secondary Writing. If you click on it, it's going to open up this document for you. And as you scroll on down, it's going to give you some ideas. So one of your paragraphs could be focused on this framework for success. And the framework can focus on maybe you've learned some rhetorical knowledge. How have you learned your ability to analyze and act on your understanding of audience purposes and context? How have you learned to become a better critical thinker? How have you learned specific writing processes for your writing and your research? How did your understanding of conventions help you become a better writer? Or how did your ability to learn in multiple environments help you? So those are different processes that you can use. And each of those areas is addressed down here, right? Habits of mind, critical analysis. So as you go down, you can use this as a source to refer back to. So my suggestion would be paragraph 1 of your body paragraphs will focus on this source. And you're going to use something in this document that you go, yes, I learned that. And so you'll address it and you'll give an example based on the work that you've done. I learned this in this paper that I wrote, or in this discussion that I had, or whatever it was. So use this document to help focus one of your paragraphs. The other 2 sources you're going to use, like I've said, are going to be based on assignments or PowerPoints or lectures that you've had previously. So as I go back to modules, you're going to see sources here. I also have the Framework for Success here. I also have the assignment directions that I was just showing you here. If you need help with MLA citations and the guidelines, they are right there. But here are all the sources that you have used or read or come in contact with in past modules. So here are the sources, which are very kind of grammatical in Module 2. In Module 3, looking at paragraphs and how to write paragraphs. Module 4, comparing and contrasting, and what you learned for that. And Module 5, in analysis. So those are different areas that you have learned about and that you have grown in as a writer. So my suggestion would be 1 paragraph would be used following, thinking about 1 of these frameworks for success that you've learned, and then also choosing one of the, for 1 paragraph, it might be, I've learned a lot more on how to be better grammatically. I've learned how to become better structuring my sentences and my paragraphs. And so you can use one or two sources in that paragraph that you talk about from Module 2. Maybe you want to talk about how you've become better at comparing and contrasting. And so you're going to use one or more sources from here in that paragraph that's going to talk about what you've learned in this module. Or maybe you've learned to become better at analysis. And so this information here might have led you to become better in your analyses of writing. And so you can use these sources to address that information. I hope that helps you. I've given you already the MLA citation for the framework for post-secondary writing right here. It's right here, so you can just dump that into your Works Cited. And then I've also given you guidelines on how to cite a PowerPoint. So you can look here and find those guidelines there. If you need help with citations, I can help you with that if you have any questions. So our goal is to get you thinking about these assignments. I'm going to go back to this piece right here. So those are the requirements there. You need 3 sources. One of the sources is the Framework for Success. Your word count is going to be between 800 and 1,200 words. I would say shoot for the 1,200 because that's important. And then just think about things to get you started. I'm going to do a separate video on the rubric. So stay tuned for how I'm going to grade you on the next video. Take care. I hope this helps you understand where you're going and how you're going to begin to think about structuring your essay. And I'll give you more details later. Take care. Bye-bye.